There we go. Hello, everybody. Tara Bachland here with the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. And I'm here again with the lovely Amanda Nicole. And we've been doing this series on herbs to help with trauma. And we have been getting some amazing feedback. It's been so beautiful and wonderful just for us individually, too. We've talked about that on screen and also privately as well. There's really been like a renewed healing journey and inspiring so many things. And so glad you're here with us and enjoying and partaking in the healing journey as well. Today we're exploring Lady Slipper, and the bear will come up as well. And just as a reminder, if you're joining us here once again or are new, this is coinciding with Amanda's beautiful book called Flowers for a Girl. And I really highly recommend it. It is specifically based on her journey, beautifully written, Flowers for a Girl, Plant Medicine, and Sexual Trauma. And I really like to emphasize that you can re-experience not even re-experience, but you can go through your own healing journey and revisit maybe the trauma even without it being harsh, without it being difficult. For me, it was actually, Manny, you write so beautifully. It's poetic, but for those who are not necessarily into poetry, you can grasp it. And so those are just a few things that I love. I recommend anyone who knows they've been through trauma or maybe kind of suspect or maybe just went through some rough things in life, I think it can be extremely helpful for people. So I'm excited in a way I don't know if excited is the right word, but I'm anticipating and I'm very honored. And it's such a pleasure to go through these herbs one by one with you. And like I said before, it's a bit of a class. It's a little bit of therapy. It's a lot of plant journeying and being with the plants. So they've been a really lovely experience for me. So thank you for doing this series together.
Thank you, Tara. It has been a revisiting and bringing up new layers, of healing and processing. And as strange as it might sound, especially with this topic, it's been good to remember, to refresh and remember. So thank you for holding the space.
Absolutely. It is interesting how, talk therapy obviously has its place and is very helpful for a number of people. But what can be difficult is actually sometimes even talking about it. So it's ironic, right, that it can be part of the healing, but it also, if done too soon in particular, I've heard, it can actually be re-traumatizing. And, herbs, on the other hand, I mean, it can be really it's very intuitive and very timely, and they go in where and when needed. It seems very, very natural, I guess.
This is such a curious and interesting beginning to this conversation about Lady Slipper, but this is thankfully how it happens. Because as you know, right before we started today's conversation, I said to you, I'm not really feeling it. And I said, that doesn't mean I'm not engaged with the medicine of Lady Slipper. It's not feeling the way I would expect it to feel, right? And you just said, that sometimes with talk therapy, especially, it can take time before we can talk about things in a certain way. And otherwise, there's this re-traumatizing, right? Or it's painful. And it's so curious to me because I just had a conversation with some people yesterday. Oh, this is so curious. And it was a conversation that's been several years in the making. And it's not based on sexual trauma. It's a different form of trauma. And I was telling them, at this point, it's been 6 years since this particular event had occurred. And I told them, I'm ready now. I'm ready to have this conversation now, right? I wasn't ready 6 years ago, 4 years ago, 2 years ago. I'm ready now. And it's interesting because part of the medicine of Lady Slipper is timing. It's very connected to time and timing. So this is a really curious beginning, and the fact that I just had a conversation yesterday that was along those very lines of like I wouldn't have been able to talk to you about this before.
Talk about the timing aspect or about the herb or
the particular events like particular events. And, like sometimes we need time to, all the words we use, integrate it, process it, digest, with all the words so that we can then articulate how we feel, or how it felt, and what we like now, right?
Mhm.
So the timing, and I guess I should just kind of move into that space a little bit since we're there with Lady Slipper. But part of the medicine of Lady Slipper, I tell people sometimes, is the medicine of the late bloomer. And Mullen has some of that medicine as well. But Lady Slipper and this idea of the late bloomer, there's two articles I really enjoy. One is by Asia Suler on spring ephemerals on her website and her blog. And the other is through Chestnut School of Herbs, and I think it's Juliet Blankenspore. She writes one about Lady Slipper. But both of them touch on how long it takes for Lady Slipper to bloom. You know, in some places, and I'm not a botanist, everyone is free to correct me, but I've read where, once the seed is planted, it can be 20, 25 years before it will bloom. And that's if it has the conditions that it needs to bloom, because it needs like a certain bacteria, like a microbe in the soil. So this idea of timing, and particularly, I say late bloomer, but I mean that in a human way of speaking, because part of what Mullen talks about, which is Lady Slipper's partner with this medicine, is we're not actually ever late. We're never missing the mark. But that's the way that humans label things. And so part of Lady Slipper is that some things take time. There's that idea from others that it took us too long. But the other lovely part of Lady Slipper, as it's probably been experienced by people who have found one, on a walk or in the wild, who hoped they would someday, that it's like totally worth the wait. You're not disappointed, when you finally see a Lady Slipper. So anyway, there's much more to those aspects of it, but you can see how the idea of timing is there.
Like I told you, I wasn't worried when you said you were feeling a little bit off. So the lady slipper is our Minnesota state flower. And I mean, they're just absolutely beautiful. But on the aspect of timing, so throughout this journey, I've also shared what has been a very traumatic experience in my life, which was, long story short, was a very dramatic separation from my family of origin. And along with that, it was basically being disowned by my mother with a whole bunch of other trauma and drama, not just the trauma. But I mentioned before, we've talked about how, when things like that happen, sometimes you don't know. It's not even necessarily even allies, like who's on my side. It's just like even who is safe, right? And so during this process, for well, there was also pushing away, and there was also just like, we need a break, right? It's just like, who need a cooling off period. And in the meantime, my sisters got married, had kids, and my middle sister, I knew that there might be an opportunity at some point. Like, there just needed to be time for things to settle. Like, right, they got married, their kids get a little bit older. There was just something in me that was like, let's just not rush this. They're going to find out that the black sheep is not the one to worry about necessarily. The truth will be revealed, I guess, is maybe what I was trying to say. And recently I did contact one of my sisters again, and it's been like 20 years, or well, since we really had a relationship. And I thought to myself, because as we've been doing this, I've been considering more and more talking and teaching about, because I think family trauma is really much more common than people let on, because it's shameful to talk about. I think we naturally go into that realm, which we've talked about as well. And I was thinking about this as like, when one hand, I want to help people, like, go, it doesn't have to take 20 years, like you can get through it faster, while recognizing there is a healing process that you can't rush. But the other part of me is like, No, but you can't rush it, right? There just has to be a natural timing, and then there's the other party. There are other factors.
Yeah.
So timing, absolutely. That it's yes.
Yeah, I just love it because there is the aspect with the plants actually that things can happen pretty rapidly. I mean, it can be pretty extraordinary the layers you can move through. I mean, I really do feel that about myself. And I've had people who have had similar experiences as I have when I was younger or much, much worse.
Mm.
And they know me, we're friends, they hear me talk about the plants, but they just can't seem to engage. There's just a resistance for them. And they've said to me so many times, it's amazing how much progress you've made. It's amazing how different you are. It's amazing what you're able to, and I agree, it is amazing. And it's part of why, I love the plants because I'm very aware. And the word that's coming into my mind, and this word honestly is becoming a buzzword that's overused. And when I say it, I don't even know what I'm saying, but it's the word that keeps coming into my mind at the moment. But quantum leaps and jumps. Like how did we even shed those layers? Or people talk about dimensions, timelines. Again, what do all those words mean? I don't know. But the point being, we've shifted things in ways that seem miraculous and impossible at a speed at which seemed miraculous and impossible. So this is part of plant medicine, but also there's a wisdom, in the universe, a universal wisdom, a wisdom with the plants, because some things also take time. Some things also are a longer process. Um, and it's a dance and a balance with every person will be different. What is this person ready to shift in a moment, right? What does need a little bit more time? And it's so important what you said about these other variables and factors. And this is part of Lady Slipper as well. It's not just Lady Slipper, and the seed and whatever's inside of it and the DNA or the gene or the know how that it has its design, but its environment, what's in the soil, there's all sorts of factors that are involved, even what's going on, above ground, on the surface. And I have to bring that into my mind a lot, not just with what I talked about in the book, Flowers for a Girl, but even like with my children now and, them growing and changing. There's so many factors. There's so many factors at play. There's so much, what do we talk about? The mycelium, and the rhizome. There's so much here. And so this need to have patience. And that's one of the lovely aspects of Lady Slipper is the medicine of it will be worth the wait. When the beauty is revealed, when the flower comes, the moment of blossoming and sort of, and this is very much a part of Lady Slipper because it's very, very sexual in its medicine. But when the moment of climax comes, the moment, it's here, the moment, we've all been waiting for of beauty and reconciliation, uh, it's worth it. This is, sometimes we're afraid we're going to be disappointed. Like I remember the first time I visited New York City, it had been, I grew up in East Tennessee, and New York City, the Big Apple, the this, the that, it was just larger than life, right? And so the first time that I visited, I was wondering, is it going to live up to all this hype? Am I going to be disappointed? And I mean, we're talking about New York City as opposed to Lady Slipper, but I wasn't disappointed. It exceeded expectation. I actually wasn't able to imagine myself, because of where I was from, the immensity of it and the truly larger than life quality of it, So we can sometimes be afraid that we'll be disappointed or that we'll wait forever. But part of Lady Slipper is this idea of timing and the beauty that comes, and this idea of forcing. When people do try to force things, not just with Lady Slipper, even other plants and flowers, you destroy it. That's it. You destroyed the environment and what it needed. um, and it might not be possible now. So there's a real need for um, an engagement sometimes that's patient. It's still, it's not really taking action until the necessary moment. Not to go too far, but and sometimes there's not even any action to take. It's just trust. That's the form it takes.
Well, how interesting you talk about patience and it being an endangered plant, nonetheless. Chris McPadden just chimed in as well. He co-taught with Amanda and Matthew Wood on animal medicines, and he says,
Me too.
I've only seen them twice in the wild, been back to those same places numerous times, and it wasn't there again. He says, I want to make a flower essence while leaving the flower on the plant, hopefully someday. And so it just has that, sounds like it, mystical quality of being patient, and it has its own timing, and it's something to be treasured, right? It's precious.
It's very precious. Hi, Chris. I already said it, but I'll say it again. I just as a side note, I think of Chris often because he shared with me so much beautiful tulip poplar medicine that I really value and hold on my heart. So I'm just going to say thank you again for that. But it's interesting with the timing of it because not tulip poplar, sorry, I love it. Lady Slipper was one of the first plants that Matthew Wood and I connected on. And some people have probably heard this story before. He came to Teresa's, he was doing the classes there. We went through however long that was. It was like 6 months, 9 months that he was coming there. And the last weekend, the last class, we got snowed in the yurt. It was so fun. So all of us were in Teresa's yurt, like, 20, 25 of us. It was a really good time. And Lady Slipper had been coming to me in like the month or so leading up to the class. I hadn't seen it in person, but people probably have this experience. Plants will sometimes start showing up in other ways, like through art or a card it just starts catching your eye. And I didn't know anything about Lady Slipper. I didn't even know it was rare or endangered. I just didn't know anything about it, but it kept catching my eye. And so Matt and I were having a conversation that evening, and he said something to me about me being an herbalist. And at that time, I was in my second year with Teresa and was just doing clinical practice with her and with Matt. And, I was brand new. I was just learning everything. And he said something about me being an herbalist and in a way that's who I was. That's what I was. And I said to him, I don't really feel like I can call myself an herbalist. That seems very presumptuous. And he didn't even miss a beat. He said, you're going to have to get over that. And that's also part of the medicine we'll come back to, is this idea of presumptuousness and does the shoe fit? We'll come back to it. But that was the first time that Lady Slipper came into my world, was with Matt. And that would mean that it was probably, let me do some math, maybe 4 or 5 years later when I actually saw Lady Slipper in person. And here's the perfect timing of it. I was in labor. I was giving birth to my sixth daughter. This is the perfect timing of things. I was giving birth to, not my sixth daughter, my sixth child, my youngest daughter. And this was the first birth that was going to occur after I had remembered all that had happened when I was young. I had written flowers for a girl. It was going to be the first birth where I was conscious of these things having happened to me while giving birth. And I had seen how sexual abuse and sexual trauma can affect women giving birth. And I think it's part of why I had some of the birth experiences I had previous to this little one. So I was kind of nervous about it. So we went for a walk at these like botanical gardens that are near here, which is not in the wild, but still, as Chris said, they come and go. You can't just plant them places. You know what I'm saying? So we went for a walk, and this was kind of funny too because we didn't know it, but the local kids were getting ready for prom. So all these kids were there to have their pictures made. I was a beautiful life lesson because I kept leaning against trees and like moving my hips with the contractions. But anyways, we came around a corner and I was like, oh my goodness, because there they were. And I had been to this place so many times in the previous years, and they weren't in this particular spot. I'd been to this particular spot, and they hadn't been there. And here I was about to give birth to my sixth child, the first birth where I was going to be conscious of what had happened. And so I had a fear that I didn't have before, even though it had perhaps affected the previous experiences. And there they were. And so I stood with them for a moment, swaying, and I saw, because, they're sort of shaped, the flower shaped a lot of ways. People say shoe because the moccasin flower, right? But it also can look like a little tub. This isn't the best picture of those, but it's a good picture of the lady slipper itself. But see that little indentation? I was looking at yellow ones, and they were like the little indentation was a little more horizontal, and it's like I could see all these little babies peeking their little heads out of the little space. It was adorable. And then the plant said to me, "You can feel it. You can feel it." And for those who were listening last time we met, I had said that up to that point, I had had several children, and I never felt anything once the babies were coming through, like crowning, and entering the world. I'd feel what they would say contractions or waves or, before that time, but I never felt anything after. And so with this baby, I did feel her enter the world. I felt the stretching and just instinctively, which will happen. I'd seen it. I'd attended tons of births as a midwifery student, just instinctively placed my hand over her head to sort of, counter pressure so she could, ease into the world. I felt the stretching. I felt her little hand because she had a little nuchal hand, and, the midwife helped. All these sensations. So not only could I feel them physically, but I could feel them. I didn't freeze. I didn't panic. I didn't get scared. Of course, there's a lot more to the feeling. It's not just the physical, there's the emotional, but that's perfect timing. So you wait, and then there's the moment that they appear, when it's the time for the medicine, for us or for others, when it's time. And I really couldn't have asked for a more perfect moment to have my first encounter physically with Lady Slipper.
How beautiful. Did you, in addition to the physical sensation, you mentioned emotional, did that come through more as well?
Yes. Yeah, so I'm actually feeling a lot in my heart right now, so hold on just a second. Give me just a minute. Yeah. It's so interesting because in midwifery circles, I'm going to start to cry, and I'm probably just going to let myself. They'll say, in other circles, they'll say, as above, so below. I'm sure people have heard that phrase. So in birth, they'll use that for the mom. So a lot of times, if we are afraid or feeling pain or discomfort, we'll close our mouth. Right. So we would often, say to the moms, relax the jaw, open the mouth, or make a sound. Because as above, so below. If the mouth is open and the jaw is relaxed, so will the pelvic floor and the yoni and the birth canal, these openings. But, it's not just our mouth, and it's not just our pelvic floor, our yonis or sacred spaces. But it's our hearts. That's right down the center line. So the ability to feel the grief, the ability to feel love, like that's what I'm feeling right now as I'm talking to you. I wish I could transfer it and say, see, this is what it feels like. But, to feel love. And also, this is a huge part of Lady's Mantle, to feel pleasure. So there are these sensations and feelings we may not have wanted to feel before because they were scary, but it's trying to tell us you can feel it. Well, for a lot of us, as we're moving through the healing process, we do feel the grief, the pain, the sadness. We did feel the this, the that, physical sensations that were unpleasant or scary. But it's almost like the pleasure of something, the joy of something is like the last thing we feel like we can feel. You know what I mean? So when my daughter was being born and I could feel her, I wouldn't say there was discomfort or pain or anything like that. I was so happy to feel her. I was happy to feel her. I was happy she was coming into the world. I was happy that I had a body. I was happy that I could feel my body. I was happy that my body could stretch and move. And it was after her birth that I started to be able to enjoy um, physical sexual intimacy in ways that I hadn't been able to before, and in a way that is pleasurable. We talked about that in past ones too, is the shutdown. So again, I'm getting back to the physical, but the physical is so connected to the emotional in these cases. They're one and the same. So yeah, Lady Slipper, when she said you can feel it, she didn't mean the physical aspects of birth along with the emotional aspects, but also the pleasure of it. Because I think what I'm wanting to be sure comes through is there's the shutdown, whether it's pleasure or pain or anything in between. We shut down because of the intensity of an emotion. And so part of what Lady Slipper wants to bring through is like, this isn't too much. It's not too intense. You have the capacity and the ability to feel this. So I want to pause for a second to like make room for a response. But before I do that, I just want to give an example. The picture you put up a moment ago, that was a lady slipper that I met a few years back. And it was the first lady slipper that I asked it if I could enter it, if I could touch it. So when you see that little indentation, that's the little slit, that goes into the flower, and how they'll draw in the insects and then they're trapped and they have to come out, the other way on the top. But I asked it if I could touch it, and I was like so surprised because it's so delicate looking, and just tender. But when you touch it, it is tough. You can move your hands around and I was afraid I was going. This is graphic for some of us, but I hope I'm using the words like in a loving, good way. I was afraid it was going to rip or tear, that I was going to ruin the flower. But I was like, she's a tough girl. She's beautiful, but she can handle more than I thought she could.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And this is true of us. Like we can hold more than we thought we could. We can experience more. We can feel more than we thought we could. Whether that is on the spectrum that it's not unpleasant, it's scary for us, or on the spectrum where it's highly pleasurable for us. But this idea of the intensity of emotions, you can feel it.
There's so much there. We have some really beautiful commentary from the comments as well that I'll share. First of all, Chris says, "You're welcome," is listening in. And Melodies of Our Plant says, "Lady Slippers are so beautiful and a magical experience." And Bert follows, "Lady Slipper definitely seems to wait to reveal herself when the time is right, like a lifting of the veil."
I'm so glad Bert's here because I was thinking of Bert. And I know it's the Bert. I mean, how many people are named Bert? It's Bert. Hi, Bert. I was thinking of him as I was preparing for this class, and so it's perfect that he's here and made the comment that he made, because when he said they wait for that perfect timing to be revealed, that lifting of the veil, I wish Bert could get on and talk and tell his own story. But he told me once about how he was on a path, a trail, and there was some lady slippers on the side, and they were so beautiful. And he said people just kept passing, like not noticing. They're just on their walk. They're busy. And so he told me that he kept saying, "Hey, come look over here. Look what's over here," and sort of pointing people in that direction. And, those people don't know how blessed they were to have him there to reveal that to them, like to have that moment where they could see it. I don't know how all of them responded. But it was hidden to them, something that so many of the rest of us are just like, eyes peeled, because this time of year, and it's this place, right? They're just fast moving on. They can't see it, and right there, like you said, it's something that's so rare and so precious and so beautiful, and just a magical moment to see and to experience it. They walk right past it. They don't notice there's a veil. I had a friend too, Deb. Um, she's she's been a good friend of Matt's for several years too. She's in the Western North Carolina mountains. She's talking about how she's found them sometimes just in these just clumps, just closely packed, like the pictures and videos she'll have of Lady Slipper. But they were just, she's wandering in the woods, and it's a little call to go off in the corner, and oh, there they are.
Mm.
Like right behind this little curtain, all this magic is hiding. So it's really this beauty of timing, and really our ability to be able to see it and receive it. So it's lovely for some of us to have people like Bert that are like, over here. The magic is over here.
Chris says, I've noticed there are some plants that you can only see when you're walking in the rhythm of the place you're at.
Mm. Wow, I really love that. That's landing in my body. I love it because, of course, with Lady Slipper, another name for it is the moccasin flower. It looks like shoes. And so there's so much this part of how we walk. So uh, walking our path in a physical way, like we're taking a hike, but also walking our path, our lives, how we're walking our lives. And then some of you are probably familiar with the phrase, the beauty way, this way of speaking with some indigenous groups. What is it to walk the beauty way? What is it to walk softly on the earth? What is it, like he says, to walk in rhythm with the place? A lot of times when I sit with people with Lady Slipper, dancing will be one of the images that come up, and this lightness of foot sometimes. So this idea of, yes, of being in rhythm, or the same frequency, the same vibration to match it. It's almost like, again, we're having these words that I used at the beginning, this dimension. Are you able to sort of shift dimensions, because it's almost like this is the dimension where they exist.
Mm-hmm.
This is where they exist, and where you're able to see them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In other episodes, you've mentioned more specifically when these plants came into your journey. It's interesting to me you haven't specifically named, from what I recall, when did Lady Slipper specifically come in this specific healing journey?
Well, I mentioned it at the beginning when I said it first came to me with Matt.
Yeah.
And but it's good what you're saying, because I wasn't clear on where I was with this particular journey with Flowers for a Girl.
Yeah.
So it was during those classes with Matt that I had begun to remember. In past classes we talked about how Rose came up in his class, and others, Black Cohosh and things like that. But this was the end of our time together with those classes. Lady Slipper was coming. And if you understand what I mean, my teacher was leaving. My physical human teacher was leaving, and I was on my own. I was going to be on my own, for the next stretch of this. Not only as Matt and I were talking about that evening, about being an herbalist, walking the green path of an herbalist, but what that was going to mean for me. Because, what it ended up meaning for me was, how did I learn about the plants? What book have I written so far? There's another one that's written and, being prepped for the world, but that one as well as part of this story. It was through my experiences with sexual abuse and sexual trauma. That was my window in with the plants. And I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know what all I was getting ready to walk. I didn't know what all I was getting ready to see. I didn't know what all I was getting ready to learn. And so it's very interesting that Lady Slipper came in at a time when it was time for me to walk my path. It's time now, And, at the time when I said to Matt, just about being an herbalist, much less some of the other things that have happened, that feels presumptuous. And he said, you're going to have to get over that.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to decide that the shoe fits. or you're going to have to grow into the shoe. Because I had a journey with Lady Slipper right about that time, and it was Lady's Mantle, my Alchemilla's name, that like led me through the forest, and we're running, running, hurrying, hurrying, and we get to Lady Slipper, and I told Lady Slipper, um, I just don't feel like I can wear you. I just feel I'm not big enough. And what Lady Slipper told me, and this has been, more than 10 years ago now, it said, well, whenever you're ready, I'll be here. Like whenever you feel like you've grown into these shoes, I'll be here. And so I've gone forward on this path. I've walked the path. Lady Slipper's been a huge part of it. Of you can feel it, and among other things, it'll be worth the wait. I'm still waiting. I'm still like, okay, because I'm ready for more, But also this presumptuousness. So if you understand what I mean, who am I to write this book? Why would I write Flowers for a Girl and tell people that the plants do these things for us in these circumstances, and think that I can or should say that? Where's my research? Where's my 6 other sources? Where's the 7 other human teachers that said the same thing? Where are you getting all this data? I'm getting it from myself. I'm getting it from my experience. I'm getting it from the plants. The plants are my teachers. So I wrote the book. And I had a very positive response to the book when I first wrote it, but there were a few people who were negative. And one person said, and this person, it's sort of complicated of who they might have been and why they said it, but one of the herbs in the book is catnip. And the person just wrote a comment on a review one time. It's catnip, Amanda. That's how they address me. Come on. Like, get real. Like, catnip is not doing that. You know what I'm saying? So even writing the book is presumptuous. Or how I am now when I say, I'm the Liriodendrus. I'm an embodiment of the tulip poplar tree. This is also presumptuous. But it came to me when it was time to walk my path. It's time to grow up. It's time to get bigger. And it's interesting with the grow up and get bigger and wear these shoes. One of the things Matt said to me at that time too was that Lady Slipper's like connected to this idea of Cinderella. And he was like, you're definitely a Cinderella. That idea of like, just despised, and just, why don't you clean up my stuff, and just sort of like a punching bag, to that shoe fits me. And this is who I am. You know what I'm saying? So that's when it first came to me, was when I was getting ready to start walking my path in a very, not that I hadn't been on one before, but it's a very I don't know, I'm not really good with movies and things, but like movies or video games where things say, should you choose to accept this assignment? It was one of those moments, because you don't have to always, maybe. But that's what I decided to do. I decided this is the path that I want to take. And then step after step after step, I keep saying, and I still want to take this path. This is still the path that I'm taking, even though parts of it have been extraordinarily unpleasant.
I think we all go through those choices, right? There's a Y in the roads, right? A fork in the road. And I think there's a similar feeling, like if I go this way, it's going to be like this. If I go this way, it's going to be difficult, but also exciting. And this path is like predictable, but also like there's kind of a kind of feeling. And I mean, talk about, but you also don't know when another opportunity, speaking of timing, when another opportunity is going to come to take that other route. This one's predictable. You could stay on this one.
Yeah, this is part of the medicine that came to me right before we got together. I told you I sat with it for a moment, with the essence. It was Bert, actually, who made the flower essence that I mentioned. Sat with the flower essence, and I have had that feeling again and again of this fork in the road. When my divorce and separation happened a few years back, like 2018, 2019 is when it started, and then it was a process. gosh, I have 6 children, and the conventional legal system, the conventional economic system, people would say just go get a normal job or multiple normal jobs, because I've been a stay-at-home homeschooling mom for almost 20 years at that time, and do what you've got to do to take care of your family, and that's what they would think. So if you have to get multiple minimum wage jobs to do it, and that is how people do it. That's how my mom did it. That's how so many people do it, and that is a way to do it. And for a lot of people, it's the way to do it. That's the way they're being called to do it. But I had this feeling at that moment, which was like, it's now or never. It's now or never to do what I'm doing right now, right? It's now or never to write. It's now or never to have something to do that's beautiful to me. It's now or never. Am I gonna in 10 years, when it's stable, whatever that means, in 20 years, am I gonna say, okay, well, now I'll write the book. Okay, well, now I'll learn about the plants. Okay, well, that is what some people choose. That is their path. But for me, that moment was a fork in the road. It was like, and I had this feeling, and I've had others, friends, clients, at other moments have the same feeling, like, if I don't choose it now, I don't get to choose it. Like, this is the fork, because you fork off and you go this way, and there's a new fork. We don't always get that. Sometimes we don't always, like you said. So I had that feeling, and I still have that feeling about certain things. I was having it even this morning about certain things of just, what are you going to do, Amanda? What are you waiting for? Like, there's a now or never kind of feeling with certain times. And that's a huge part of walking the path. Like, part of Lady Slipper's medicine that's taught me is it's just the next step. That's it. So when you said you don't really know what this path is going to look like, you don't know what's going to happen, it's just the next step. So when I started to engage with the plants at that time, they were so beautiful to me. Everything was so beautiful. People know how this is when it first happens to you, and it's all magical, and everything's talking, and everything's alive, and everything's sparkling and glistening, and it's so enchanted. And how did you never notice all of this before, right? So, like, who's not going to say, oh, I want to go do this? And then you get into it, and maybe your marriage falls apart. Maybe your religious community says, no, you're a witch or a heretic. We're not having it. Maybe your family leaves. Maybe the job you had doesn't fit anymore and it's uncomfortable. Maybe this, maybe that, maybe all these things start to happen, and they're not quite as sparkly, and they don't feel quite as good, and you're not feeling so enchanted. You know what I'm saying? And the medicine that Lady Slipper gave me this morning when I sat with it was, and this is part of what we're talking about with timing and lifting the veil, that often that beauty is found in unexpected places. So, like, for me, my journey with the plants that has yielded so much beauty. Like, I was thinking about that this morning, of just, Tara, I have so much inside of me that I know that I've gathered and learned from the plants, and I don't want to die with it. Like, I was thinking this morning, how do I get this out? Like, all this beauty, how do I get all this out so it's not just gone? How do I share it? So, like, I say that this morning, right? But where did I find all that? I found it all in moving through the trauma and the abuse of when I was small, moving through the trauma and the abuse of my marriage and the religious community and my family. I found it through loss. I also found it through beautiful, serendipitous, moments of like, oh, the tree just did this, and the flower just did this, and the plant just did that, and a bird, But I also found it in moments where I'm like wailing, and broken. So this idea of beauty being found in unexpected places, and some of the things that wanted me to write down was abuse, trauma, death. Um, Also, it wanted me to make a point of the our sexual organs themselves. So also like our yonis. I don't know what words everybody's comfortable with. Lingam, penis, all these words we have that we use to describe these physical aspects of our bodies. For a lot of us, it wanted me to make a point. You can't look at the flower and not. That for a lot of us, we have in our maybe currently or in past parts of our lives, we've recoiled. That's the word. Things you recoiled from. So some of us have recoiled from those parts of us. We've recoiled from those parts of other people. And it's like there is beauty. And I don't want to say it like I'm not equating these beautiful parts of us with death or trauma, but that's how we've experienced them, and it's like, oh no, there's so much beauty here. So even some people now, I'm sure people have heard of these practices where you just gaze at the other's body to enjoy the beauty, to take it in. But also it wanted to give me this example of the pink lady slipper there that you have the picture of that you shared. I had a friend say to me a few years back, I know where we can find some pink lady slippers. And I was like, okay. So I went. But like we were like right here in town because it's like a really rural area. We just went off a road and down some of these like driveways, show up at this house and it's gonna be in these like kind of pine woods right behind the house right there. And I was like, here? And they're like, yeah. And it was the house of someone who they don't care. They don't care that there are lady slippers there. They be the sort to like spray that area or mow it. They don't have any value for it, and yet they're the people who get to have this. You know, it was a lot, like dozens of lady slippers. They don't care. Also, this person who lived in this house, I guess they still do. Now there's stuff coming up about them, how they were inflicting the very things we're talking about on others, sexual harassment, those sorts of things. They have this on their property, the very medicine that is needed on their property, and so it's just like, what in the world? Like Lady Slipper's here, right? Like when we say, oh, I'm the fairy lady, why don't you come live at my house? It's like, no, I'm going to be here, just right off the road in this place where it's a lovely home, but, they don't care that it's there. And these other things are happening. Of course, the medicine comes where we need it, right? But this idea of just like beauty being in unexpected places and even things we would recoil from, especially wanted me to use that word. So I say that because when we go down the path, no, we don't know where it goes. We're just taking the next step, right? And the next step is often a beautiful one to our eye, but sometimes we look and the next step is going to require us to step into something that we would want to recoil from, that scares us, that we're not sure, as we said before, we can feel that, right? And then we get to choose, and we don't have to step into it, and maybe we're not even supposed to sometimes, but we get to choose. We're always like creating our path as we walk it, right? And in some ways it's up to us if we make it beautiful. That's also up to us. There's this story, and I'll stop. It's a little children's book about the lady slipper. I wish I had it with me. I'll see if I can find it. It's a lovely picture book about Lady Slipper, and it's about a little indigenous girl who's her people are sick, and it's usually her brother who goes to get medicine, but then he also falls sick, so she goes to get the medicine. And she has to do this journey. I'm going to make it short. And she's wearing her moccasins, but she has to go through snow and all this. Anyways, her feet are bleeding as she walks back, but she's got the medicine, for her people. And so there's sort of these blood footsteps along the way. And the people recover. And in the spring, Lady Slipper springs up in all the places where her feet were bleeding, where she had lost her moccasins, because there was this really a tragedy, and a great amount of loss, and where she had to walk a path that was hard and required a lot of bravery and courage, and then where she wasn't even sure she would survive it, and she's coming back with her feet bleeding with the medicine, that her people needed. But all of those steps along the way, to go, to come, to keep going, to continue, there are choices along the way where we're making a path, and we get to decide if it's a beautiful one or not.
You had mentioned earlier, we were talking about the fork in the road, and throughout life, I see more and more that, yeah, you can choose either way, and it might feel good to feel comfortable on the predictable path, and it's likewise exciting and tumultuous on the other path. And I think it's easy to think that that new path is going to be just sunshine and roses, right? But the sun will give you sunburn and the roses, are prickly. But that other path also has its prickles, has its thorns, has its drawbacks. I forget why I was bringing this up, but oh, just as this is multiple tangents coming together, is as you're talking, I imagine the person that is like, that sounds wonderful. Like, I would love to have the opportunity for that fork in the road. I just want to have a fork in the road. I've been on this single path for so long. I want something different. And about those of us who've been working with the plants for a while personally or with other people, we probably all tried like utilizing the plant like a potion. I want this to happen in my life. And so I heard this did this for Amanda, so I'm going to take it. So what about the counterpart to the person who maybe doesn't have the fork in the road? Maybe they want the fork in the road. What would you say to that person?
Well, Lady Slipper gave them a message right before class. So I'll share with them what Lady Slipper said. So we just talked about how we create our own paths, right? So people may say, well, I want a fork in the road. I'd love to have that. Well, you can create your own, which can be very scary to say. Personally, for myself, I like to wait for the situation to present itself, because I've had enough of a tumultuous journey without, creating those things for myself. But I've actually been having the feeling recently myself of like, maybe I need to create what's next. And so I'll tell you what it said to me this morning. After the beauty and unexpected places. You'll be surprised where the path takes you. Step off the beaten path. It's well worn. Take a fresh approach. Step onto a new path. And part of what it's the medicine that's been coming through for me the last few days before we met was this idea of risk. Okay. So if you feel stuck, if you're like, I'm just going down the same path and I just feel stuck, where's a fork in the road? You create one. Take a risk. It could be as simple as, this is such a mundane example. I'm sorry, but it's what's coming through. I hope no one's like offended by it. Maybe you always shop at Walmart. I don't. I can't. It's really hard for me in there. But like, maybe you always shop at Walmart. Okay, go to Target. Maybe you always visit a certain park. Go to a different one, right? For me, there's a tulip poplar tree that I always sit with. For the last several years, it's the tree I sit with. It's the tulip poplar that I go to. And lately, I've felt like it's like, man, honey, go somewhere else. Like you need to experience, even if it's tulip poplar, in a different place, a different location. So when I say take a risk, it doesn't have to be enormous. It can be something small, but it's not familiar to you, right? Because if you do that, you're in a new place, new people, new experience, new ideas. Who will you bump into here? What animal will you see? What idea will you have? What inspiration will come? Or like for me, just as an example, what I've been feeling personally is the place that I'm at, I don't really think that this is the place for me, the physical place. Where is the place for me? I don't know. And so I'm the sort that waits for the signs and synchronicities, like the signs, the guideposts along the way, right? And then I'll go in those directions. But lately, I've just been having this feeling that I would call a whim, but that can also be, as some of us know, our heart nudge, a soul nudge, to buy a plane ticket to a particular place. Just fly there. What are you going to do there? I don't know. Just get off and see what happens. Am I moving there? No. And will I someday? Maybe. But, so that's a bigger kind of risk. I'd drive there if I could, but I can't. So, anyways, that's part of what I would say is, because that's what it gave at the beginning, which is take a fresh approach and a new path. Go a different way, like create your own fork in the road. Because the truth is we have them every day. When you get in your car and you're in the habit of going to this place to get your coffee, you don't have to. You have a choice. You always turn right. You can turn left. Do you see what I mean? So, but that can be very scary for us sometimes, because we can feel like, well, what if I get it wrong? Or what if I mess it up? Or what if I do it and it wasn't worth it? Or what if I do it and nothing happens? You know what I'm saying? We have all the fears. Well, nothing may happen. It might not go the way that you planned, right? But it's also a way for people who believe in the quantum, like we brought up at the beginning, and energetics and whatnot. It's really inviting your soul. It's inviting your heart. It's inviting the universe and saying, I'm open. Mm-hmm. I'm open to a different way. I'm open to a fork in the road. I'm open to new choices. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there are so many ways to ease into it. It doesn't have to
exactly. It's coffee.
Yes.
You buy plane ticket.
Yes. You can start with the little things. Mm-hmm. So how does the bear come into this?
Honestly, Tara, I do not know. So for people who are like, how did you guys get this title? I just send Tara notes that say, this is the plant that wants to come through. And so this time, what wanted to come through was Lady Slipper and the bear. It was very clear about that. And in my experience, I haven't experienced Lady Slipper and bear together as a medicine, as I often do. I often experience a plant with an animal, and they'll come together. Maybe somebody else has. But I guess what I'll just share is my own experience with the bear, which even as we're sitting here is, weaving itself into Lady Slipper. The bear also came to me at the beginning of the journey. So I write about this in my book, where I was getting a massage. It was after one of my children was born. I think my 5th child was born. My parents had purchased a massage for me, and the gentleman who was doing the massage, he pressed on this place at the base of my skull, like occiput, is that how you pronounce it? And it really hurt when he pressed there. And, some people say, if it's painful, tell the person, the practitioner, they can ease off. I'm not really that sort of person. Maybe that's bad, but I'm more like, oh, that doesn't feel good. Breathe into it. Relax into it. It's more how I am. And so that's what happened. And when I did it, I suddenly heard, for the first time ever, I had never had this experience before, my body spoke, like a voice inside me. It was actually around like the liver gallbladder area. And it was a voice that said to me, let it go. And I had this internal dialogue while he's pressing on this point. I said, let what go? And my body didn't answer. And then the man, he let go, and he told me to roll over onto my stomach, and so he had just been like massaging my head or shoulders or whatever. So I did, and I had an experience that I'd never had before. This was the first time I've had what I would call like a vision, or maybe a shamanic type journey. I never had this experience before. I rolled over onto my stomach. Oh, wow. There's a lot of medicine coming through with this. And I read about this in my book. That's when I saw the bear. And there was a bear that stood up in front of me. And I'd never seen a bear up close in the wild before at that time. But I could see it. I mean, it was like its fur and every strand of fur and the oiliness in its fur. And I won't get into all of it. It's in the book, but its claws, there were burdock burrs, which is a bear medicine. And it sort of came over. I'm not telling the whole thing. It's better to read it, I guess. But it ended up coming over me and sort of putting its mantle over me, and where its head became my head and its claws and paws became my hands, and we just sort of merged. And this was a fork in the road for me. This is a turn in the path, right? Because up to that point, I'm a pastor's wife who covers her head when she goes to church, is expected to, learn in silence, all this sort of stuff. And suddenly, I'm becoming a bear, with claws, and the way you think of it with like shamanic medicine man teeth, claw, this merging and this shift in the path. And it's interesting because as I was telling that story very simply, it's better to read. The guy who did the massages, he was such a character. I mean, if my parents had not sent me to him, I would not have gone on my own because it just seemed a little sketchy. But I don't think it was sketchy. I just think he just had a different style than I had. Okay. So, but when I went into his massage space, what I do remember is so he had navy sheets on the massage table, and like that's just like not what you have in massage rooms. It felt more like you're like 16 and in high school and there's like a water pit or something, but he had like navy sheets, and then all around the walls he had pictures of wolves, and he had statues of wolves everywhere. And I remembered at the time thinking, okay, because it really wasn't like my way of being. But with Chris being here, at least at the beginning, I don't know if he's still with us, and with Matt and the animal medicine, part of wolf medicine is change or die. And Matt talks about how a lot of those medicines will have sort of that right angle aspect to them. And so sometimes it's not even just a fork in the road. It's like this road ends here. So you make a left or that's it, right? And for me in that moment, that is what was happening for me. This part of your path ends here. You can't really go back from having one of those moments. They change you even if you're not conscious of all the ways they're changing you. So sometimes there's just you can't go any further on this path. It really is like the wolf medicine, the change or die. And for me, part of it was when the bear came, and it was like it was a calling. It was, I use this word really simply. Words have so many connotations and people get so up in arms about stuff. But it was like, in a very simple way, an initiation for me between the bear and I into the path I was going to begin, where you're going to start learning the medicine. You're going to start becoming this person. We place the mantle on you, and even the mantle you're going to grow into. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was kind of lost in the journey, so it makes sense. Kind of brings you back to like your thoughts, but it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
When I kind of imagine experiencing the journey with you.
Yeah, it was really amazing because I looked up, whatever that means, because it was just like a vision. And the bear was standing on the opposite end of a field from me. We were looking at each other across a field, and it was standing up on two legs, looking at me. And we just made eye contact, and we knew one another. We recognized, we saw one another. And then it sort of like exited, like stage right or something, and I thought it was gone. And then the next thing I knew, it was over me and it was coming down. And it's interesting because the next time I experienced the bear that way, because there are other ways I experienced it, I also write about in the book, was in one of my sessions with Katie, and Matthew Wood showed up in that same session in like a vision. And it was he and the bear. And the bear came and placed his mantle over me again, while I was like facing Matt in this vision, and Matt was just smiling. He was just beaming, and he had on his hat, that he'll wear, sometimes. And it was almost like me and Matt and the bear just kind of went. And then there was like this water. It was like a water baptism that came down. And Matt, I write about this in the book. Matt and the bear, they lifted me into the air, and I was wearing this fur mantle, and I had on glass slippers, and they fit, and I was wearing them. And so I had come to the place where, the shoe fits. And that may be part of why Matt showed up in that vision, because he had been an initiator for me, like it was part of that. And now it was almost like a blessing, a baptism, like in the Bible when Jesus would baptize certain ones and then they'd go out to go do the work now, it's kind of like that, like a baptism. Now you're going out to do the work, and the shoe fits, and you're wearing a bear mantle. I wish I could look like that in real life.
I'd love to see the drawing of this, like you're talking about the kids' picture book, the woman with the glass slippers wearing the fur bear mantle.
I would too. I think that's just when we're talking about walking our path. I hope that's where my path takes me. Like it takes me to the point where, like, if you came to my house to visit and I walked out onto my porch, that's what I'd be having when you came to see me. I'm just feeling in my heart just so much fullness. Like somebody seriously needs to hear this, myself included. We don't know where the path is taking us, like Lady Slipper said. Like we're going to be surprised where it takes us. But it is going to be totally worth the wait. We don't even know how much we're going to grow. We say, oh, I'm not big enough, oh, I can never be that. Oh, I can never do that. Oh, those shoes will never fit me. It's almost like you're like going to burst through some of these shoes. Like the shoes you're going to be able to wear and the roles that you're going to feel and the path that you're going to walk is going to be, much more than we might have ever imagined. Especially I feel when like our hearts say yes to it. Like we say yes. Like I'm open to the journey. I trust the journey. I'm open to the path. And we don't have that resistance. Then it just starts to unfold, and it can be really quite magical.
That's a thread that keeps coming up often in the series of becoming an herbalist. So you're one of the teachers I've interviewed as well who are herbalists in the professional realm, and just hearing about their journeys, right? This idea came up as we have year one students going through the year one program. And there quite a few are just like, I just love herbs. It's going to be a part of my life. I don't know how, but I'm going to do it. But still at the same time, trying to seek, what are those going to forks in the road? What are the alternative paths to right now? And this is a theme. It sounds like this would be interesting for timing. If you're in the year one program, maybe you're in that space and kind of wondering about timing. There's a lot of the similarities among the stories are, being patient, following your heart. When that opportunity comes up, you'll know it. And it's so interesting. And I don't think that's unique to people who are following the herbal path. I think that's really a lesson in life.
Yeah, I agree.
I remember that in particular when I met my husband, who wasn't then my husband, but several months later we became engaged. And it was such a pivotal point in my life. It wasn't, I was 18 going on 19. I wasn't looking for a husband really. But it was like, here I was in this amazing relationship and he had asked me to marry him. And it was like, okay, I can go down this path, which is like the standard path, or I can take this opportunity, which I don't know if this is going to come up again. He said he'll stay around, but you also know that certain variations on that path might be a little bit more bumpy or whatever. And, every day I'm grateful that I took the unbeaten path, the one that, my parents didn't like, my grandma wasn't too happy with initially. Especially my grandma loves my husband now, but it was truly meant to be.
Yeah. There's a lovely aspect to all of this of the following the heart. You
Mm.
know, and Tulip Poplar gave me a song once, not Tulip Poplar, I can't, sorry, it's just what I say. um, Lady Slipper gave me a song once. I sat with one that someone had gifted me. So, you know, you're not supposed to go out and dig them up from the wild, you know, especially while we're talking. I use it primarily as a flower essence or just energetically, just sitting with it or a picture. But this person had been at a plant sale and there was someone who had done that sort of thing, you know, that had just in these pots. So they were like, "Oh my goodness, I have to rescue this plant." So they purchased it and they gave it to me as a gift. You know, they were like, because I had taught them about this plant. So I had this little space at my house at the time that I had made like a little fairy nook, like an elemental space. So there's this lovely book, The School of the Elemental Beings, and I think you pronounce his name Karsten Masai. I may not be saying that correct. Massei. Beautiful book, one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. And he speaks about how to invite elementals into the space, how to engage with elementals. And so he talks about how wherever you live, you can take a portion of the land you're on and let it be wild. Not cultivate it the way you might other spaces. So there was a place on my land at the time that was just already like that. It was so obviously like the elemental hub. So I just left it that way. So when the lady slipper came, I put it in the middle of this elemental space. And I sat with that one day and it gave me a song. And I'll share the podcast link with you because I actually can't sing the song right now. It's been so many years since I've sung it, I wouldn't be able to remember it. But the whole song is about what does your heart want? What does your heart know? It's the whole song and it goes on and on. It's sort of a magical little song that it gave. And I could feel it like pulling it out of my throat. It was one of the first times that I received a song from a plant and just let it sort of sing through me. But what does your heart want? What does your heart know? This is such a beautiful part of the medicine, too, because when we take risks, when we take a path that's unusual or rare, or one that others might not take, right? This idea of did I make the wrong choice? Did I do it wrong? Should I have gone in the other direction? And one of the beautiful things that I've been learning over the years with the help of the plants is that, like with the heart as the compass, if we're coming back to the heart, what does my heart want? What does my heart know? There's no going wrong. Like that is the path. There's no going wrong. Even if the things that happen along the way aren't what we expected, aren't what we anticipated, even if they're painful or hurtful. Um, One of the lessons that I learned once in this way with the heart is that the heart knows what it needs in order to open. Because it's the nature of the heart is to open and open and open and open and open, right? And it knows what it needs to open. And sometimes it's not what we think it is. Sometimes it's the very things we think would like clamp it shut is the thing that's going to, as people will say, break it open, kind of thing. So that was part of the song that Lady Slipper gave me that day was a song about what does your heart want? What does your heart know? And that aspect of us is so silenced and suppressed. Um, and it can be scary to begin to listen to that voice again and to trust it and even trust some of what I've been saying, which is you can create your own path. You can make your own choices. So many of us, our parents have always made the choices. Our spouse or partners always made the choices. A boss or an employer, a religious institution. All the choices have just already been made. The decisions are already made. Now you're just supposed to obey orders, or just follow the steps. But to be like, I think I'm just going to walk this way, you know. But if we're tapped into the heart, we've got it. Like we can trust it because it's coming from what I think is a place of divine love and source and origin. And you've got it. I wish you guys could feel my heart. It frustrates me actually that I can't like translate this feeling. It's in my heart. It's in my throat. Like I feel so full right now. It's just almost about to burst. But a message that Tulip Poplar gave that's along these same lines the other day was that with the heart as the compass, this waiting, this process we have sometimes, this patience, it's like the heart, the needle is like it's setting. You know, like when you have a compass and it's looking for due north, and you gotta wait a minute or turn a little this way and that way, and it takes a second in one spot, or sort of a slow start to be like, due north this way, right? And so what it was saying is, like you've been waiting, and your compass, like the arrow, has been it's setting itself and it's ready. You're set, due north. You got it that
Mhm.
way, you know. And sometimes it takes time, like patience and process, to find like the direction that we're wanting to go in, the true north, or when I say the other day, you're due north now. Like you've got it, Amanda. You're due north, And when you've got that, like, go for it, run with it. You know what I mean? But sometimes it's hard to just to be patient. It's so frustrating. I feel sometimes to get to the place where I can take the next step, or I can run for a little while free. You know, but that's part of this medicine is sort of the dance that it often is,
Mhm.
and that we can be playful about it. Like sometimes we're just taking it too seriously. Like I can kind of feel that in my chest right now too. Like we just the weight we feel of the decisions. And Tulip Poplar's like, you can play. It's an elemental, type. I mean, they all have elementals with them, but there's something about Lady Slipper and certain other flowers that are so connected to the fairies and the fae, And it's like you can play.
Yeah.
You can play with it. It's too serious. You want to buy a plane ticket and just go. Just buy a plane ticket and just go. What? It's not the end of the. It's kind of like Lady Slipper's like it's not the end of the world. That's how we feel. That's how we feel, but there's a playfulness that it wants to bring in, and a trust in like the goodness and the beauty of the universe. Again, like that pleasure where we're just so used to feeling things go wrong. We're just so used to feeling it not go well. To have a trust that we can feel more. It can feel good.
She does just look like a fairy godmother. Like, take put on your slippers and take that
Mhm.
journey, and it looks so light too, like she's floating there,
I
right?
know.
Yeah.
That's an amazing thing to me about this plant. It is such a beautiful flower to
Mhm.
be able to engage with what I think is some of the heaviest, darkest experiences, you know, to bring us to a point where, especially for those of us who have experienced trauma, especially sexually, particularly, like we don't think we're ever going to feel this way again. We're not ever going to feel this like pink and vibrant and playful and innocent, and beautiful, and also we're not ever going to feel that comfortable. Look at her. I mean, she's just completely exposing herself. She's just like not even trying to hide, who she is, and really the most intimate parts of herself. She's not even trying. Like she's just the word that keeps coming in is like bedazzled. Is the word that keeps coming in, and we just look at it and think, I'll never feel that way. Did I ever feel that way?
Mm.
And part of what Lady Slipper brings in is like, uh, of course you will. Like this is who you are. This is part of your being as well and your essence. And so this ability to be this playful, but innocent, while also sensual and sexual and bold, but also shy, because she's like that rare, precious. She's just this beautiful mix of, I feel like, all the things that we would want to be, like we would wish when you talk about the fairy godmother, all the things that we wish we could be. She's like, but you are. Like this is what's there, and this is what's possible.
So for those that, are feeling in their hearts too, and it's really connecting with them and what you're talking about and teaching, how can they connect more with you or explore this more with or through you?
Well, I am still at this time doing one-on-one sessions, so that would be an hour, hour and a half that we would be together, um, and we could focus primarily on Lady Slipper, and sit with her together and listen, right? The intuitive sessions, or we could just begin the session and see what other plants might want to come.
Mm.
There's also, I'm still offering the creative residencies at this time, and those they focus primarily on the creative aspect of ourselves, um, but they can go anywhere. So we can even use Lady Slipper as our guide in those, or again, just see what wants to come. So those are the two ways people can engage with me at this time. I'm not doing any classes, but I do enjoy the one-on-ones where we could listen together, go deeper together, and see where they want to take us.
Wonderful. And also at the brand new institute, Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, we've just launched a grand reopening. Amanda does teach as well at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. You may enjoy animal medicines. So I just went to courses and I typed in animal. There's a free intro, which is lovely if you're wondering what that's all about. And then there's a full course. I mentioned Chris earlier, and he co-teaches with Amanda and Matthew. And it's just chock full of all fascinating concepts, really practical application, as well as with how animal medicines and the herbs. And if you love stories like this and journeying, I absolutely highly recommend this animal medicines. Again, there is, if you type in animal here, the free intro, that's a great place to start. And then also Amanda teaches the plant attunement. So if you like more of this kind of exploring with a plant, sitting with a plant, contemplating, wanting to learn or just experience what it's like to receive messages from the plant, definitely check out this plant attunement. There's multiple classes and examples that you get to test out and experience, and lovely place to start as well. Like Amanda said, there's opportunity to do it one-on-one with her. This could be something that you might do beforehand, afterwards. Just really wonderful experiences. And right now with the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, our grand reopening month it was Matthew's birthday yesterday, by the way. And so it's really a month of celebration. We're celebrating his birthday, the grand reopening. This brand new site has so many amazing new features, including searchable transcripts and closed captions, which many have been eager for, and a very easy site to use, social media-like functions. It's just very intuitive. There's a growing site index. So just like a book where you have an index in the back, and if you're studying a certain topic and you want to learn more, it helps you guide you, of course, in the book where that's mentioned. Similarly, this growing site index, if you're studying yarrow, for example, or lady slipper is a good example, it will help you find the exact videos that have that content mentioned. And then last but not least, certificates. There are many more features, but these are just some of my highlights, my favorites. Certificates for most courses, and just included in the price. Once you pass the test, you can print out your certificate. It also details the hours for accreditation if you're working to collect your hours for registration to be an herbalist, a certified herbalist, or registered herbalist, or you just like collecting the certificates and putting them on your walls, or taking a look at them every once in a while and seeing how much you've accomplished. That's there for you too. And each week we're offering bonuses for certain signups. So each week check back to see if you qualify to be entered in a drawing. For example, right now, anyone who enrolls in a 1-year enrollment for any of the libraries, library A to Z, or professional library, automatically the first 20 are going to get all three: Matt's recent book, 7 Guideposts on the Spiritual Path, the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism Year 1 Materia Medica cards, and our Forage Fund cards. And all of those, so that's the first 20, and then all the rest who enroll in a 1-year option in one of the libraries will at least get the flashcards and the Forage Fund cards. This will change each week, so hop on over to MatthewWoodInstituteofHerbalism.com to see what's going on in the particular week that you're seeing this video. And then all of our library options, just it's worth noting, include over $17,000 worth of content. So at one low monthly price, you can access all that content. We just added over $2,400 worth of content. And like I mentioned before, we have a new option called the professional library. So if you're an advanced student, you're just a very gung-ho student, or you're a practitioner and really want to take your studies to the next level, that is something you'll want to look into. And like I mentioned, we just added over $2,400 in new courses to the library, including tongue evaluation, which many people have been looking forward to, as well as holistic nutrition. You'll be seeing more nutrition-like content coming to the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. That was Matt's vision. He wanted people to be able to specialize not only in herbalism, but maybe you want, like they do at colleges, right? You have a major and you have a minor or an emphasis. So of course you'll be an herbalist, but maybe you'll have an emphasis on animal medicines or nutrition. And so that's something you can currently do in the year one program, and that is expanding as we speak. We're working like crazy to bring it all together. Year two is right around the corner, by the way. So if you want to take your herbal education to the next level, Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism is definitely the place to check out to do that. So Amanda, it's always amazing. I feel like this one more than ever, I feel like I'm going to go away. I've always contemplated our other talks about the herbs, but this one feels like it's just kind of, it's gone inside. Like over the next weeks, there'll be more coming out of this. So I'm interested to see over time what unveils.
Yeah, it's so curious because I feel the same way. I can't really articulate or translate the physical sensation I'm feeling, but my chest, my throat, there's just something going on there. So I'll get back to you about it because there's definitely more coming up and moving through. So I'm glad that today went well because, like I told you, I was a little concerned about it because I had just I usually have like a playful, fairy kind of feeling when it's time to talk about Lady Slipper, but today it was heavier and our conversation wasn't heavy.
Yeah, interesting, right? Because we've had heavier conversations.
Yeah, but something is definitely wanting to move through.
Yeah, I agree. And this has been part of what's interesting about the journey, and certainly working with Matthew Wood over the years. I mean, I have a demeanor that's very easily, I'm just like, let's follow this path. You know, we got to have it this clear cut. Let's have an agenda. And working with Matt over the years has definitely helped me come out of that routine. And also to be ready to do things like this, where it's, you know, if it's not a cookie cutter podcast, that's okay. You know, trusting that whatever's supposed to come through is coming through, and which you'll see too in the comments that are coming in. I haven't read all of them. I encourage you to check them out on Facebook and YouTube, and those who are joining to check those out too, because it's very, we get lovely comments, so that helps. But it is part of the healing journey too, to hear how it affects other people and what their experiences are. I mean, that really is a key aspect to herbalism, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, because I learn from everyone's comments. There's always connections being made that I'm like, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of that, or sort of an aha moment. So maybe I'll go and read through and see if anything gives indication for this feeling in my heart and in my chest, because it's pretty palpable.
Yeah.
So we might have a follow-up on Lady Slipper.
That'd be interesting. And I appreciate that you didn't cancel. You had mentioned that you were in other circumstances. It might have been an occasion to cancel, but I trust too that is a part of the medicine speaking that, you know, no, this is meant to be.
Yeah, it really is. It's such a powerful medicine. I know we have to wind it up, but it's so lovely. It's so beautiful. But I guess part of what I'm experiencing is just, like I said at the beginning, the weight it can carry, like how strong it is, what it has the ability to like move through. So yeah, I might go take some more of that essence and take a walk or something and see what happens.
Yeah, that sounds good. I need a break in nature too.
Yeah.
That sounds lovely. Well, thanks again. I look forward to next time. And thanks to all of you who are attending at the time and who are viewing this in the future. We really appreciate your likes, your thank yous, your comments. subscribing, turn on the notifications so you're notified of impromptu or even scheduled events like these, and share with your friend if you found this helpful. Share the good news. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.